Boy, you can get done tragic. Demons appear like magic. Money long, so elastic. Foreign fabrics to fashion.
I'm itching for money, cash addict. She get drawn in my pockets like Titanic. When I get on the beat, it's Jurassic. Little niggas don't want static.
Wavy come like tsunami and drown you with the drip out.
Welcome, everybody, to the Coos Ballroom podcast. It's been a while. I believe our last podcast was when I had Tony D on to talk about the Lions after they traded for Blake Griffin, which obviously was quite a while ago because the Lions season is over and obviously didn't end very well. But yeah, it's been a while since I've done a podcast. But like I said to Hal a little bit beforehand, I will not deny or confirm that I'm doing this because I see so many people doing podcasts now that I can't be the only one not doing one now. So I'm going to try to get more consistent with this. But as I mentioned, I do have a guest on here. His name is Hal. You can find him on Twitter at Halbridious. I believe that's how you say it. Is that right, Hal?
Yeah, sure. I don't care. You say it however you want.
You guys go follow him on there. He's a fun follow, a cool guy. Very smart guy, just as passionate about Stanley Johnson as I am. So, if that's
you didn't even started the podcast and you're already giving your people bad advice.
If that's your kind of thing, go hit him up on Twitter. He's a fun guy to follow. But let's not waste any time with this. We're gonna get straight into it. We're gonna be talking about the Pistons today because that's basically all Detroit has to talk about right now. But yeah, there's been quite a bit of drama around the Pistons. A lot of fans are unhappy. I'm unhappy. I don't know if Hal's happy or not. I don't think he's happy, but we can get into it. The first thing we're going to start.
Sports are supposed to provide happiness. That's not why we're here.
Well, I think if you're a great team or you actually win, you
I haven't had a good sports team to follow since 2005-06. So.
Yeah,
I don't know what being happy with sports is like.
Yeah, I was basically in diapers when the Pistons were good last with Chauncey and all of them. So I don't remember half of that anyway. So I don't know if I can even say I've enjoyed a good team because I barely have any memories of it. But that's neither here or there. But I guess we'll start with the whole Blake Griffin situation. And if you guys follow me on Twitter or you guys follow my YouTube channel or subscribe, I should say, you guys will know that I made a video in the summer saying that Blake Griffin was my favorite Piston of all time. There was a long explanation for why that was. Part of it was, like I said just now, I don't remember much of the going to work players. Like they'll always have like this. They're always in their separate room from me. Like they'll always have their own little higher standard. They'll always be in like their own room because they're the going to work players. And I do have some memories of them enough to where they will be held in a high regard to anybody who ever comes to the Pistons. But based off memories, things I can actually remember and hold on to and feel emotion about, Blake's basically been the only thing who's given me anything to smile about for the Pistons for about 12 years outside of Andre. But Andre really, it was hard for Andre because Andre was hated by half the fan base. But anyways, let's not get too much into that. Basically, Blake Griffin, I was wanting him to come into the season and have a bounce back season. I've been calling it the revenge tour all off season. And I was literally trash talking so many people saying that he's going to prove you guys wrong. And boy, has he not done that. He has been awful this year. And while being awful, he still maintained to play high minutes. He's played 40 minutes twice. He's played multiple games over 35 minutes. He's had a few games at 33 and 34 minutes. So, Hal, let me just ask you about this, and then we can get even deeper into it. What's your overall thoughts about Blake Griffin and the amount of minutes that he is playing?
Well, I mean, the first thought is that it's sad that it's not been fun. Right. It's just the first thing is like, this sucks that Blake isn't Blake. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And it's largely not his fault, which is even worse. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, a guy's playing badly, but that they're his problems. You know, Blake's tried as hard as he can, and it's just not working. From a minutes perspective, I find it frustrating because I don't think the Pistons are treating him well with the minutes, and I don't think he's making the most out of his minutes. Like, I think if we've seen in the last game, like Blake looked really good for about 20, 25 minutes, and then he played 40, and the last 15 were awful, and you come away feeling like Blake didn't have a great game because he ended so poorly. And so I don't think anybody's helping themselves by asking him to play this much, because if he was playing 20, 25 minutes, if he's having a really good night and he keeps going and you find a way to get him to 30 on a good night, fine. That way he looks best. And I think that's best for his trade value. I think it's best for his confidence because he's not struggling at the end of games. I think it's best for his health. I think that's just better for everyone than kind of what we're seeing now.
And I obviously agree with you. Me and you have talked about this many times on Twitter, if anyone hasn't seen it, but me and you are very much on the same page here. It doesn't make any sense to me why he's playing this many minutes. I hit on it in an article I wrote like a week and a half ago. It doesn't help anybody, like you said. It doesn't help Blake because he's looked his best, and even when he's looked his best, it hasn't been great. It's like you said, it's really sad seeing Blake like this, like you said, because it's really things out of his control. Like he can't help the fact that his knees he's had these knee injuries or this hamstring injury here or there, and then just it really was out of his control. He's tried his hardest to come back, and it's just so far it looks like it may not happen. But it doesn't help anybody playing him this long, because when he plays shorter stretches is when he looks his best. So it doesn't make sense for Blake. And from the perspective that we've been fed, which we'll get into later, which is one of the big topics I want to get into later, but we'll get into later. One of the things we're being fed by the opposing argument of, well, Blake has to play these minutes because his pedigree in the locker room, and you can't piss him off, or you can't cause disruption in the locker room, or we have to, or one of the main ones is you're trying to raise up his trade value. You're actively doing the opposite of that by playing Blake that many minutes. You're actively lowering his trade value because teams are seeing how bad he looks. He just doesn't look good at all when you extend his minutes that long, and it's actively not working for either party. It's making Blake look even worse than he already is, and it's not what if that's actually the Pistons' plan of they're trying to make his trade value go up. They're trying to show him off a little more. You're actively doing the opposite of that. You're just making his trade value look worse. And at this point, I don't see how anybody in their living mind would trade for Blake this year or even next year. Maybe to take on the expiring, but there's no way anyone thought Blake would look this bad. And him playing as many minutes as he's playing is making him look even worse than he actually is. So it's not helping either party with what's going on right now.
No, and I always question that whole push of, well, he's a veteran. He has to have the respect of a veteran. And it's like, does the locker room really look at Blake and go, well, Blake's not worth anything if he's not playing 30 minutes? Like, I don't think any player in the locker room is going to lose respect for him or not listen to his voice as a veteran leader if he's playing 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I don't think anybody cares. They're going to care a lot more if Blake is struggling and puking the ball up at the end of the games because he's exhausted. And then they're going to be like, well, there's this double standard if he's playing and I'm not. That's, that to me is what's going to cause a contentious locker room and arguments. People don't argue when everyone is playing their best. So you have to make sure everybody's playing their best. It's kind of that simple to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just, it doesn't make much sense to me at all. Like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more later with the opposing argument and the people on the other side of this argument. But the whole Blake Griffin thing is really sad, first of all, like you said, and then it's just also, it doesn't make any sense. It really is quite confusing to understand. And I'm really getting sick of, honestly, hearing well, if it's still happening a month from now, then you can complain about it. No, it should never be happening, because it's actually, if you even want to make the argument that, like I said, with the upping his trade value, they're trying to get his trade value up. Well, what about Blake? Because whether it's now or 2 weeks ago or next month, 2 months, it doesn't matter. At any point you playing Blake like this, it's hurting him. Whether he wants to admit it or not, I don't know if he's came to grips with it yet, but everyone watching should know. And whether it was, like I said, last week, 2 weeks ago, today, tomorrow, a month from now, he should never be playing this many minutes. It's hurting him as a player. It's making him look worse, and it's actively hurting him as a player. So it just, I can't come to the defense of anything that they're doing with it. The only thing I will say, though, as a positive with it, is that this very last game, yesterday, actually, I don't know when this podcast will go out. It's going to be their game on Friday, January 22nd. Blake was only, I don't think Blake was probably going to close that game. They had Josh Jackson in, and he fouled out. And then Blake was brought in with, I think 2.5 minutes left. And he had only played, I think, 25 minutes to that. I think he ended with 29 minutes. And so, I mean, maybe that's a sign for the future. Maybe they're changing things now. I don't know, but that we have to give credit for that, because it looked like this last game he wasn't going to close, and he wasn't going to play any more minutes than the 26 minutes he was at. So I guess we can give Casey and the coaching staff credit for that one. Is there anything else you want to speak on, Hal, with the Blake situation?
No, the only other thing you hear every now and then is, oh, maybe Blake wants to play 30 minutes. Maybe it's not worth pushing his buttons to force him to play less. And the only response I have to that is, if he wants to play this much, you need to make sure that you're having a long conversation with him about the consequences that we've already talked about here, about his health, his value, etc. Because sometimes players don't necessarily know what's best for them because they're so invested in playing. And if that's the case, that needs to be a conversation the staff has as well, because, again, this is kind of hurting him. And so that would be the only other point I'd want to touch on.
No, yeah, I agree with that. This whole situation is just not the greatest one, and I think the Pistons are just completely fumbling it right now with Blake. Obviously, Blake's not helping it himself because he's not playing. He's just not very good, but they're making it much worse on the whole situation. But I think we can transition that into just the minutes and the rotation drama of just like the entire rotation. So I've been on this train all year of, why isn't Sekou playing? I've been on the train of when Sadiq was like playing 20, 25 minutes a game. Now he's seeing 7 minutes, 8 minutes out of nowhere. That just like completely changed. And then we had a point where Jahlil Okafor was just being gifted minutes in the first half. I guess I don't know what the reasoning for it. Maybe just not to, like I said, make him mad or frustrate him or cause any problems in the locker. I don't know what it was before Stewart, even though Stewart's been getting consistent minutes with in the backup situation. So there's not much to complain there. But the overall minutes drama, which is basically Blake, to be honest, if we're going to keep it there, you can make it the rotation, everything that was going on with there, everything we had to complain about with it. It really comes down to Blake and his minutes. But Hal, what do you think about the rotation so far you've seen from the Pistons this year? Not just from Blake and his whole minute situation like we talked about, but just the rotation in the whole. What do you think about it so far?
I guess the big thing is, clearly Blake is taking up a few minutes he should. I mean, there's a lot of consternation about minutes that I think people misinterpret as like Blake shouldn't be playing so that all of his minutes go to Sekou or something to that nature. And like, really, we're talking about redistributing 15 minutes from a couple players to other sources, right? It's not really a conversation about these people shouldn't be playing at all over these, it's, hey, Blake Griffin's playing 34 minutes this game. Why didn't he play 28? And why couldn't Sekou have had a 6-minute stretch in the third quarter? Or, Dylan Wright's, having a really bad game. He still got 26 minutes. Could Sadiq Bey have stepped in for another little stint? It's this weird thing where we keep seeing guys get minutes. Dwayne really likes to give them the minutes at the end of the first, heading into the second. And then it doesn't really seem to matter whether they played well or not. They don't get anything into the third and the fourth. And that really, to me, is the confusing point. I've talked about this on Twitter before, but like, from an educational standpoint, it's really important that you have a chance to learn from mistakes. So when you have Sekou come in for a 5-minute stretch, he doesn't really get to do anything. I don't necessarily think they've been getting hooked for mistakes that often. It seems to be just the rotation, but you learn from a game and then you never have a chance to like implement what you just learned. You get a chance to defend a guy one play and, you get burned by a crossover. And then the next play, you don't get a chance to like make up for it because you've been pulled and you don't get back in the game. And to me, that's one of the most frustrating things because I don't really know how developmental these minutes can possibly be. I don't really know what 4 minutes here or there for guys does. I've said it before. I would much rather prefer, and it does seem like Casey's kind of settling into this where, he commits to a guy for a game. This is going to be your game to play 12 minutes as part of the rotation. And I much prefer that than the idea of pulling guys in and out for a few minutes here. Obviously foul trouble, etc. will interrupt that. But, I remember when help me out here. Who was it the Villanova guard? Darren Hilliard. There was a point in SVG's tenure where like Stanley wasn't playing super well and SVG was just like, you know what, this next week of games is going to be Darren Hilliard's time. And whether he plays well or not, doesn't matter. We're going to give him 3 or 4 games where he's in the rotation, where he knows he needs to prep for these things. He can kind of get into a rhythm and get into a system. And if he still struggles, fine. Then we move on, we try something else. But I like the idea of guys knowing where they're at all times because I think that's really helpful for their preparation and for how they play.
No, yeah. So you kind of mentioned it. So I guess we could kind of, since I'm just gonna make the decision. We're gonna go ahead and combine this topic and what our next topic was gonna be because you kind of hit on it already with the whole straw manning and the whole like of the opposing side that is just like I don't even know like what to call it, misinterpreting. I don't know if they're misinterpreting it because I feel like they're doing it on purpose, to be honest. The opposing side of this argument that's like defending Casey or defending the rotations, you hit on it that no one's saying bench Blake. No one has said that. No one has said you can't play Blake or play Blake 10 minutes or Derek should just be completely benched. Or Sekou must start and play third. Like, no one's saying these things that you keep, like, these people keep tweeting and keep, like, oh, so I one-upped you guys there. Look how smart I am. You guys are idiots. They're stupid fans. I don't know where they're getting this from. It's like they have, like, this, I don't know what they call this strong man syndrome. Like, they have to, like, this power syndrome where they have to show that they're smarter than everybody else. Or I don't know. But no one has said that. At least smart people. No one has said bench Blake or bench D Rose or just like none of these things that they keep saying is what we're suggesting. It's more just like what you said. Hey, Blake played 40 minutes this damn game. He's 31 years old. He can't move. He's not very good anymore. Why is he playing 40 minutes? How about 30, 29, 28 minutes? Why is he not doing that? Hey, Blake played 37 minutes this game. Why? Same thing. Derrick Rose. He's fumbling the ball off his leg, back-to-back possessions at the end of the fourth quarter. Why is he still in the game? Or he's closing these games out. Why? He's continuing to make the same mistakes in back-to-back games. If you want to go back to him in a future game, okay. But I just don't see – these are the things that we're saying. Not the whole sit Blake the entire game or we shouldn't be seeing Blake at all anymore. Don't give him 10 minutes. Sekou has to start. Let's play him 30 minutes. No one's saying that. And like you said, Hal, I really don't see the point literally at all. I don't see even a little bit of the point. I almost would rather Sekou not even play than see him get 4 minutes and then sit down and never play again. What's he supposed to accomplish in 4 minutes of play? What is it that these people are wanting to see from him in 4 minutes of play? Because like you said, it almost seems like now that it's not like Casey's pulling him after, like he's benching him. It just seems like this is part of the rotation. So it's almost like, or not almost, it seems like that even if Sekou were to go out there and ball out in 4 minutes and just do whatever it is that you guys want to see from him, he's probably not going to get minutes in the second half anyways because this is just a rotation that Casey has picked. Like, this is just what he's, like, you're going to get these minutes in the second quarter, and then the third quarter you're not going to play, and at the beginning of the fourth we're bringing Blake back in, and then that's that. And that seems to be what the rotation has been for, like, the past, I believe, week or so. So I don't see like what's with this whole rotation, how this is helping the young players at all. I know people are some of the beat writers are getting sick of hearing this. I know some other people also getting sick of hearing this, but it's just the truth. There's been too many lineups. Like Wayne Ellington's balling out, but like who's that really? That's the problem with the whole Wayne Ellington signing in general. For me, was that if he plays well, it's like you can't bench him. Like you can't just say, "Hey Wayne, you're playing too good. We need to sit you down." And like you put yourself in this situation where if these older guys are playing well, you have to play them because you can't. I mean, like you just can't. You can't just tell them, "Hey, you're playing too well, and we need to get these young guys minutes." Even if you're playing well, we're just not going to play you. So now we're stuck with lineups where we're saying DeLon. We literally have had so many lineups with DeLon Wright, Wayne Ellington, Blake Griffin, Mason Plumlee, and then you pick your choice of whoever the wing is. Either it's Jeremy Grant or Josh Jackson. And no one wants to watch that, and that's not helping anybody. Those four players being out there at the same time, it's just not helping anybody. It's not. So you combine that with the fact that now you also have Svi not playing at all, which, look, Svi's not playing well. He's shooting, I believe, 31% from deep. He's not playing well. But what maybe how you disagree, and you can speak some sense to it and try to convince me. But I've been on this train since the beginning of the season. It just doesn't make sense to me in a developmental year, a year that's supposed to be about rebuilding, not about winning games. It's supposed to be about rebuilding, developing your young players. Why your young players are now being snatched into the doghouse and just being completely benched for not playing well. It like who cares? Like we're supposed to be developing them. We're supposed to be playing them minutes, letting them fight through adversity, letting them fight through struggles. Because the objective is not to win games; it's supposed to develop them. So the fact that Svi has now all of a sudden gotten completely benched for Wayne Ellington. Like I said, Wayne Ellington's playing really well. That's the whole. That's why the signing it's hard. Because you can't just tell them, "Hey, you're playing well. We're not going to play you." But then, like, it's also what's this helping? Who is this helping? Now we're back in the situation of last year or the last 5 years that people have nonstop complained about. That now we're just watching old guys make rookie mistakes and lose games. We're doing the same thing we did last year, 2 years ago. So I'm just really confused about what exactly this goal is. Because even Casey said last week that the goal of this season is to feed Sekou, Sadiq, Stewart. All these guys minutes. That's the point of this season. And that's just not happening. It's not. And it just doesn't make sense to me in this type of season. Like if we were in a season that we were trying to compete a little bit or win some games, okay. But this is supposed to be a developmental year. And we got Svi not playing any minutes. We got Sekou playing 5 minutes in a per game. We got Sadiq who went from 20 minutes to now all of a sudden he's getting 7 minutes. The only consistent person seems to be Isaiah Stewart, which, I mean, I guess that's fine. But, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me at all what's going on. It very much frustrates me because the point of this season was supposed to be developing your young players, and I don't see how in a developmental year your young players should be getting put in dog houses for not playing well. That's going to happen in a developmental year. You don't bench them and keep them in the doghouse. Like what's benching Svi and playing him 0 minutes doing? Who's that helping? Because now I just don't get who's that helping. Yeah, he's not playing well, but just not playing him in a developmental year, I don't see who that's helping. But Hal, you can go ahead. If you disagree, you can convince me otherwise. I'd love to hear it.
I mean, I agree with you. For the most part, I think some credit has to go to Casey, or some understanding has to go to Casey for his job is to try and win games. And I think it's important to maintain a culture that tries to win games. You know, playing Wayne Ellington, to me, yes, it's a good thing because it's showing people what the hard work pays off. And I'm pretty okay with that. Does he need to play 30 minutes? I don't know. You know, again, this is the same conversation we just had where it's can we shave 4 or 5 minutes off there to give someone else a chance? You know, can he play 25 minutes, 25 really good minutes? But I don't have a problem rewarding Wayne Ellington when he's playing really well. It's more the games where it's Delon Wright is 1 for 10 and nobody else gets on the floor, or Josh Jackson's really struggling especially these last couple games since he came back from injury. Josh Jackson struggles, but he just gets to stay on the floor. He played 30 minutes against Houston, was 3 for 8, and just he had 4 turnovers. He fouled out. Like, he wasn't playing well, but Sekou gets 6 minutes. They can kind of do the same stuff. So that's one of my struggles. Svi was not playing well, so I don't mind him getting less minutes, but then he goes and he has the game against the Bucks. I think it was the last game against the Bucks where he played pretty darn well, was making passes, drove to the rim, really got himself going. And then the game after that, he's back on the bench. And I don't think he came off. I think, was that an Atlanta game where I don't think he came off the bench until the very end of the game.
In Milwaukee, so he had the game against Milwaukee, just to confirm what you're saying. He had the game against Milwaukee. He played 18 minutes. He shot 6 of 9 from the field. He had 18 points. And he was immediately followed up with a 2-minute game, the next game against Miami.
Yeah, so like that's where it's like, okay, I don't understand what standards we're trying to set here. If the veterans play well, they get more minutes, but if the veterans play bad, they don't get their minutes taken by the young guys. We have seen Isaiah Stewart claim a rotation spot, but that's because he's been pretty good and Jahlil Okafor is really bad. Like, it's really hard, but at the same time, like, again, Josh Jackson's one of the guys I've kind of looked at and been like, he's really not been good. He's been off. Does he need 20, 30 minutes every game when he's been off? How has he earned that? I don't know. And it's hard to figure out where the criteria is to earn more minutes when the veterans clearly aren't doing things. Blake Griffin has a really bad game. He's Blake. He's going to get 25 plus minutes. At what point is it like, okay, you know what, that third quarter stretch, he's just not going to play so that when he comes back into the fourth, he gets up to 28 minutes, but, now he's actually got some legs under him because he was struggling. That's the kind of coaching decision where we don't really seem to be seeing it. And it would make me feel a lot better if we did. We do also have to give a little bit of understanding to Dwayne Casey in that I think he, and I think Laz Jackson mentioned this the other day, like, he would have been expecting Killian Hayes to be getting 20 plus minutes every night. So the guard rotation's really screwed up right now. Derrick Rose has a bad game, and it's really hard to say pull Derrick Rose or play him less minutes because your other options at point guard are Delon Wright, who's been really bad, and that's pretty much it. Or it's the two-way guys, and neither one of them have been good. So, there's some stuff where, like, I support trying to play to win, and I support playing guys who play well and rewarding playing well, but I don't understand why veterancy seems to get credit in that equation when it doesn't seem like it should. That's the concern.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. So just to add on to like what you were saying about Svi. So yeah, Svi played 18 minutes that game. He shot 6 of 9 against Milwaukee and then followed it up immediately with a 2-minute game. So like, what's going on there? Like, it's like you said, even if you, and it kind of, and this is something I brought up a week ago too with Sekou. Even if these players do play well, they don't seem to be getting rewarded for these minutes. So that's like where it really gets confusing. Like you said, these veterans continue to play bad or good, they get the same minutes. The young players, they play bad, they get completely benched. They play good, they get 2 minutes. So it's like I don't get, like, what's the dynamic here? What exactly is going on here? Like what is and we can kind of shift into the next topic I was going to talk about. What exactly is it that we're expecting from these young players? What is it that we're expecting to see to earn them more minutes? I don't know what. It's just really confusing. It's really frustrating. It's frustrating to watch, and it's frustrating to see happen over and over. And I don't know. I don't know what they can do about it, because obviously it doesn't seem like Casey decides to do anything different. I don't think he's. If anything, it seems like what you said earlier. He's decided to do this whole Sekou's going to get these 5 minutes in the second quarter. We're going to pick one guy per game that gets to have these minutes in the second half. So I don't know. I just it's really frustrating. Like you said with Wayne, Wayne's been playing well, so playing him fine. But 33 minutes, he doesn't have to play 33 minutes. He doesn't have to. And like I said, it's just that's one of the things that I didn't like about the Wayne Ellington signing, because I knew that he probably wasn't going to be in the rotation to start, and he would eventually get put in. And Wayne's not just going to go out there and play like trash. So I knew that as soon as he got put in the rotation, when he started playing well, Casey was just going, oh yeah, let's here you go, take the minutes. And now we're not even getting any fee. Like I said, I don't see how that helps anyone right now. Wayne Ellington's not helping the Pistons' future. He's not. They're losing games anyway, so he's not technically helping them now, anyways, either. So I don't see. I just don't see the whole point of this. It seems almost like. Go ahead.
Well, if I can push back on that a little bit, I think there is some value to having a guy like Wayne starting and coming in, and like the Pistons were struggling as a first quarter team for a while. Like starting off with a 30-point first quarter is going to make Dwayne Casey, or should make Dwayne Casey, a lot more comfortable trying things moving forward, because you've got momentum and you're not starting down 15 and trying to claw it back. You don't have to worry quite as much about every single defensive possession. There is some real value to that, and I do appreciate that about Wayne Ellington. It's just that we don't seem to be seeing that next part where it's like, okay, we have a lead. This is fee time. Go get them fee. And, oh, nope, it's the same Josh Jackson, Delon Wright guard rotation that really we don't need to see. We kind of know who both players are. Obviously, Josh is still a pretty young guy who has a lot to prove, so you definitely want to see that out. But that's the thing where it's like, what are we getting with these veteran minutes? Because there are obvious positives to having veterans on the team, but what are you leveraging that into? And we haven't seen that, and we're not seeing it being leveraged into wins either, which if you're going to play it like this, you got to win the games, because that's, if you're going to be the coach who says I value winning, that's got to be what you do.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'm okay with Wayne starting. I agree with that. I also agree with what you said after that. It's just the part that comes after that that's making me very frustrated with the whole thing in general. Is if you're going to do the first part, and then they don't follow it up with trying to get the other guys some minutes. I just don't get it. And for what it's worth, I have no problem myself at all with Josh Jackson getting the minutes he has, because I feel like he was playing really well before he got injured, and I feel like Casey's trying to get him back into that groove, which he's obviously struggling to get back into that groove. I know he's dealing with a quad injury as well that he's playing through, along with coming back from the ankle injury. So I have no problem with him playing Josh Jackson a lot, because I thought Josh Jackson was showing that he was taking a next step before he had that ankle injury, which I thought was just I thank God it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I thought it was really bad when I first watched it happen. But I have no problem with Josh Jackson playing as much as he does. I hope he gets back on track. But yesterday he was struggling. The thing is with Josh is that he's shooting too many threes for my liking. But even then, yesterday he was getting to the rim, drawing fouls, which was cool to see. He was going to the rim and doing some of the finishes that we were growing accustomed to seeing beforehand. And on defense, I thought he was playing really well on defense as well. So for me, Josh Jackson isn't really a word to me. I'm completely fine with seeing him play as many minutes as he does. So that's just me, though. I don't like
it being the rotational starter or like the first guy off the bench. It's just like, okay, these are the games where he's not playing well. So what do we do then? And then the answer to what do we do then seems to be, well, just keep playing him. And it's like, no, you got to we have to pivot to giving one of these other guys a chance to make it, because whenever they don't play well, Josh or Delon or somebody gets to come in and take their minutes.
That's fair.
That has to be the trade-off there. That's all I'm saying. I don't have anything against Josh, and like you said, he started hot and he's got a lot of potential to do really cool stuff. I absolutely want to see him do well too. That's no question about that. It's just there are games where he doesn't have it. Let's get someone else involved. There are games where Mason Plumlee is really screwing up. Last night in Houston, and honestly during the Atlanta game, he probably needed to be pulled a little earlier. And I guess last night in Houston, he had like 2 quick fouls and got pulled right away. So we saw Stewart come in quite a bit earlier, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, as soon as this happens, as soon as we see their personal momentum shifting, someone else gets to come in. That's how that dynamic has to work.
That's fair. I think I would sum it up with I would just like to see more consistency with what he decides to do. I think that's where it is for me. If are you going to reward young guys for playing well in their minutes? Okay. If you don't play well, are you going to lose minutes? Okay. Not some players get to play bad and keep their minutes. I would just like to see it be consistent, which is where I'm at. I don't think it's been very consistent at all. I think it has been. I think it's been consistently inconsistent. How about that? That's what I think it's been. But this is a good way to segue, I guess. We kind of hit on it earlier on a little bit, but I didn't want to get all the way into it because this is the topic I told you how beforehand I didn't want to tell you about. I wanted to spring it on you. So let's see. We'll see how this goes right here. So earlier today, which is what is today, the 23rd. I was on the locker room app with Duncan Smith, Keith Black, and a few other guys. We were talking about the Pistons, obviously, and Sekou got brought up. So Hal, I followed. Obviously, we follow each other on Twitter. We talk very much on Twitter. I think me and you are along the same lines with Sekou. But so let me just tell you what was being said on this app. So they were saying, Keith and a few others were saying that they want to see something from Sekou. They need to see Sekou do something when he's on the court. He's not doing anything when he's out there. And that, for example, Isaiah Stewart, when he's on the court, he's making an impact. You see him when he's on the court. Sekou's out there, he's not doing much. This was my argument back to them. And then you can say what you think. I'm just going to lay out my argument that I made back to them. And then you tell me what you think, and you can say whatever you want. So my argument back to them was, yeah, obviously, Stewart, his strengths don't rely on his teammates. Whether you have good players around Stewart, bad players around Stewart, you have me around Stewart, Hal around Stewart, Stewart's going to do what he does because what he's good at doesn't rely on other players playing good. He's going to hustle on the boards. He can get the boards, whether it's good players or bad players. He's going to set hard screens because you don't need good or bad players around him to set good screens. He's going to play hard, which, by the way, I don't like how people keep saying Sekou doesn't play hard. I watch Sekou run in transition or off a rebound. He's usually the first one down the court almost every time. He's running down the court trying to get open. His teammates just don't find him, which is going to lead to my second point. Stewart can succeed and play well and make an impact no matter what his teammates do because his strengths don't rely on his teammates. And I hit on this in the summer. I think me and you kind of talked about it a little bit in the summer. Sekou's strengths very much, at this point, he's 20 years old, mind you. He just turned 20 last month. So it's completely fine for me that this is his only strengths. But his strengths right now rely on his teammates, on his coaching staff. They have to take advantage of that. They have to enhance his strengths. They have to put him in the situations to succeed, which is cutting to the rim and hitting him when he cuts to the rim. These people keep, like I don't know. I feel like people are watching some games and having confirmation bias with Sekou. Like the games when he gets the ball on his cuts and make it, they say, oh, well, there you go. He's finally cutting again. No, he's always been cutting. It's just a matter of, are the teammates actually going to give him the ball when he cuts? That's the thing. And that's why I don't really get what's going on with Sekou. Not that I don't get it. I blame so much on Casey, and I blame so much on his surrounding players. Like, obviously, first of all, Sekou has to play better. Obviously. He's not playing great. He needs to make his shots from outside. He needs to do more. He has to play better, obviously. But very much of this, in my opinion, is on everyone else. Sekou runs in transition almost every play off a rebound. He doesn't get the ball in transition. It's not some games he doesn't decide to run. It's just some games they give it to him, and he's able to do something off of it. Other games they don't, so you don't notice it. Sekou's always cutting to the rim. Some games they give it to him, he scores. Some games he doesn't get it. It's not that he stopped cutting. He's always cutting. He just doesn't get it. So this is with Sekou, you can't compare him to someone like Stewart because if Sekou was a center who just set hard screens, he wouldn't need. Obviously, he'd be more impactful because he doesn't need anybody else to show off his strengths. Sekou's strengths very much rely on other players taking advantage of them. It very much relies on his coaching staff putting him in a place to succeed. And me and Hal both being Stanley Johnson fans, obviously Stanley Johnson has made such an improvement with the Raptors. He has. I know Hal was very vocal about the Pistons just not putting Stanley Johnson in positions where he would be best suited to succeed. Maybe he wouldn't have succeeded if we did it, but he definitely wasn't put in the best situation to try it. And that's what's happening with Sekou, in my opinion. Like I said, he's not just stopped cutting some games. He's not just stopped running the floor some games. He's just not getting the ball sometimes. And just real quick as well, before I let you get in, Hal, that's fine for me for those things to be his strengths right now. Like, obviously, if he had all these other things under Pat, great, he'd be an amazing player. But that we were never expecting Sekou to be a tremendous player in year 2 when he just turned 20 last month. He was supposed to be a developmental project. He's developing. I see he's stronger. He worked. It's not like he's taking a step back. I see him stronger. He fights harder on the boards. I see him hold up better on defense because of his strength. It's just he's not being put in the best situations to succeed. And a lot of it has to fall on, in my opinion, on Casey. And the fact that he plays with Derrick Rose too, which sucks to say because I'm a Derrick Rose fan, but Derrick just doesn't suit what's going on here. When Sekou's playing, he's mostly playing with Derrick, and Derrick's not going to be passing to him the ball on the kick, on the cuts. He's not going to be passing him the ball in transition. And when he does get the ball, all it's going to be is kick out to the corner. And that's basically what you're asking Sekou to do now is be able to hit corner threes, which sounds eerily similar to what they did to Stanley. And I know people don't like to hear about Stanley because Stanley obviously was not a fan favorite for more people. But, with the podcast with me and Hal, you're going to hear Stanley Johnson's name at least once. But overall, my point is Sekou's strengths very much rely on what his teammates do, and his teammates have to find him to utilize these strengths. For me, with the coaching staff, you put your players in a position to succeed. You know what your players' strengths are, so then you try to take advantage of those strengths, not highlight their weaknesses. And I think that they've majorly failed at trying to highlight Sekou's strengths because every game, like I said, I see him running in transition. I see him going on cuts. He's just not getting the ball sometimes. Most of the time, he's not getting the ball. And I literally threw a celebration when Josh Jackson threw him like the pass on a transition. I think it was 2 games ago. Josh Jackson seems to be the only person who looks up and tries to get Sekou the ball when he's running ahead. And he's gotten a bucket both times doing it with Josh. So, Hal, you can chime in. Basically, I think that was the finishing of my argument against that. I think that's all I said. And I think that's all I have to say about it. So, Hal, you can go ahead and chime in.
Well, I agree with you a lot. I think the one distinction I'd make to what you were saying is I think his opportunities are really dependent on his teammates, more so than any of his skills. Like you say he's running in transition, like he's executing the running in transition. You said it, like he's running. And if people don't find him, like that's not even, to me, it's not even on the coaching staff necessarily, other than you pointed out in film, like, hey, Sekou was open here. Why didn't you pass it? It's just guys aren't finding him. And the question has to be, if you're watching Sekou, are you giving him, when you're grading him, are you giving him points for that? Or are you saying, oh, well, he didn't score in that position or that possession, so it's, it's a knock on Sekou now. It often seems to me, and I had this a little bit of a rant earlier today on Twitter. I don't like sports gambling a lot because I think sports gambling really reinforces this notion that everything has to be results oriented, and people just they bypass the process for the results, and they say, oh, well, Sekou didn't take a shot in that period, so he played badly. And it's like, well, he was cutting and he ran in transition a few times and he made the right rotation to get open for a few threes and nobody passed it to him. And, for me, when Sekou's in the game, for the most part, I am watching him. I'm not watching anyone else. I stopped watching the larger offense, and it's just, what is he doing? And it's like, okay, he's getting all these little points for doing some little things correctly. And obviously he makes mistakes. He's 20. He's the 3rd youngest player on the team. He's like the 15th youngest player in the NBA still. He's going to make mistakes, but you have to evaluate the process. And for the most part, I've been really happy with the process, which is why it's been so frustrating that he doesn't seem to get strings of minutes together. I think, I agree with you. His strengths are cutting and all that. I do think, for the most part, like when he cuts, it's just him making a read. So you have to reinforce that with the team. You don't necessarily build an offense around him cutting. I don't think that's kind of how he works. I think you have to instead reinforce that people need to be looking for him consistently when he's on the floor. If he's in these spaces, every now and then we'll see that flash to the paint he loves to do, or those post-ups. And it's like, hey, he made a call. He made an audible that this is a thing that's open for him, and everyone else just has to be aware of it. You don't necessarily have to script it. But at the same time, it's like part of it's just, and you mentioned it, like Derrick Rose isn't the kind of player who passes to that. And so again, you have to grade Sekou on the process he's taking and not the results, because clearly that, we're just not in a position to do that right now. Overall, I've been pretty happy with him. I think he's still feeling things out defensively. He's been a lot stronger than he was last year. You mentioned that there's been a couple times where like a big bodied player has tried to like drive on him, and Sekou's just kind of walled him up. And that's been great to see, because he was getting bent around the middle quite a bit last year. He's struggled finishing and he struggled a bit shooting, but he's also, those are the kind of things I'd expect to get better if he gets longer minutes and into more of a rhythm, which he really hasn't had. But I want to take a little detour here, if you don't mind, and just say that I think he gets the same bad rap a lot of other players get, because he's got kind of hooded eyes, and he's got like the underbag on his eyes, and he doesn't have like the most aggressive posture. And we see this in every sport. I'm a big soccer fan, as I know you know. You see it all the time in soccer players. We see it all the time in basketball players. It's, oh, that guy's not trying hard. He's got bad body language. And it's like, no, he's just got a face that's not, it's kind of like the people who have like resting bitch face. Like, he's just got like a resting kind of sleepy face. And we can't keep judging players' efforts because they don't have body language we like. Like, you're not Bill Simmons' body language doctor. That doesn't fly here. I'm not okay with that. It's quite often pretty racist feeling. It's just that it always makes me uncomfortable when I hear these things about players' efforts. And it's like, he's making the runs. He's making this. I don't know what you're watching, other than the fact that he doesn't have eyes bulging out of his face all the time, or like, I don't know what this criteria is people are grading, and I don't think it's fair. We hear it constantly about a very specific subset of players, and it's always really, really disturbing.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think one player that we're very aware of that I think struggled with this was Andre Drummond. I think he got a lot of that, what you were describing just now, but yeah, it's just everything you said I agree with as well about Sekou. It's just, I don't know, man. I feel like I don't feel like people really like, what's the word? I don't know if they had like the right expectations for Sekou, or like really understand the type of player Sekou is, or I don't know. It's just, I don't feel like people are evaluating this very well at all. People keep saying that he's not earning minutes out there, and I just disagree. Like you said, I see everything you're saying. I think he's making these, like, I'm not looking for him to score. Like when Sekou, like, apparently, and this is the question I was going to ask you, actually, even though we're going a little over the time I wanted to go, but that's fine. But before we end this, I wanted to ask you, what do you think these people are, or everyone's expecting to see from Sekou to give him minutes? Because like you said, I'm seeing what I want to see. I'm seeing the progression. I'm seeing him constantly cutting. I see him constantly running in transition. I see him doing these little things that I'm happy with. Yes, he makes some mistakes out there, specifically on defense. Sometimes he's late on a rotation, but I'm seeing progression. I'm never seeing him not trying or anything like that. And sometimes I see a lot of times, you mentioned this just now. I'm really mad I didn't bring it up, because it's one of the things that really make me mad watching Sekou. So many times he runs the transition, and what happens when you run fast in transition, it forces the first person back to have to pick you up, which immediately causes mismatches. A lot of times Sekou is the first one down the floor. He gets a mismatch with the guard on him. Every time this happens, you can back me up. If you disagree, tell me. But like you said, I watch Sekou when he goes in. Sekou gets these guys on him. He doesn't just go to the corner. He flashes every single time. He tries to post these guys up every single time he calls for it. I have not seen a single time he has not called for it when he gets these small guys on him. He just gets waved away. He doesn't get the ball. So like you said, everyone just keeps doing it. Oh, let's look at the box score. Oh, look at this. He's 0 for what? 0 for 1, 0 for 2. He has no points. He didn't do anything. He doesn't deserve no points. And that's just such BS to do with Sekou. It's just literally so BS because he's doing what you want from him. He's doing everything you're asking of him. And it's as simple as like I said. And like, I'm a Rose fan. I'm a D Rose fan. I've always been a Rose fan. But it's just as simple as that. Derrick Rose does not mesh well with what the Pistons are trying or should be trying to do right now in their season, in their process. He just doesn't match with it. He just doesn't mesh with it. And like you said, Derrick's just not going to look for that. That's not the type of player he is. He's a really good corner passer. I think he's a really good corner skipper. But he's not going to look for Sekou on cuts. He's not going to look for Sekou when he's posting up guards. And I think another thing that really hurts the Pistons is that they don't look to run in transition very much at all. They don't try to run fast-paced, and that really hurts against Sekou too because he's, like we said, he runs in transition every time. So no one really is like looking for that opportunity because they're all old and they don't want to run. So they slow it down every time. So the results, I think that was the best. Actually, I think that was amazing what you said. Results-based, comparing it to sports betting. I think that's amazing because that's what people are doing with Sekou. They're not watching the progression. They're not watching him how he's cutting every single time. They're just looking at the results and assuming that he's not doing this game or he's just not earning PT, which I don't see how. It really hurts. I don't get it. I don't see how you watch Sekou and think that some games he's not trying as hard or some games he's not running as hard or some games he's not as aggressive. I see the same Sekou every time I watch him play. It's just some games people find him, some games they don't. And that's really all it is to me. So, I mean, if you have anything else to add on to that, you go ahead.
Well, so about the transition stuff, I think I looked at this on Cleaning the Glass the other day. Pistons are one of the lowest frequency transition teams running off of rebounds and out of the basket.
Did you tweet that? I think
I did.
Yeah, because you were the one who got me realizing that. Like, see, this is another thing that just is not working out. But go ahead.
No, so I think they're like 29th in transition. I'm trying to pull it up now so I can confirm. And they're only like 15th in running off steals. Now, it's hard to say how much you can change that because it's pretty personnel. But like Derrick Rose pushes the ball. It's not like he doesn't push the ball. Josh Jackson pushes the ball. Mason Plumlee even pushes the ball, but they don't necessarily like. Part of it is that the Pistons don't seem to have a transition offense. Like they don't really seem to have a, like the UNC transition offense where like everyone's got a specific thing they do in transition and they're all trying to get something in semi-transition. Like it doesn't really seem to be part of what the Pistons do. And that definitely seems to hurt them. They don't, without, how do I put this? They run a pretty conservative defense. So without turning the ball over more and kind of risking more in that regard, I don't know if they're going to get more transition looks, but they definitely need to just look for Sekou more in transition. They need to look for him more on those post-ups. You said it. I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 times they've made the entry pass into his post-up, and that's probably out of like 20 to 30 opportunities. So it's not enough. You asked earlier why I think people are grading him out the way they are, or why they have these opinions. I think there's a couple reasons. I think first and foremost is just everybody has bad expectations for youth players. Like people do not have an understanding of progress curves. Rookies are bad. They're almost always bad. And people get spoiled by, Karl Anthony Towns coming out of the gate like crazy. And it's just, someone like Sekou is not an offensive wonder kid. That's not what he came in as. He came in as an athlete and really, really raw. And if you aren't, if you're not John Morant or Karl Anthony Towns, like you're going to have some rough spots as a rookie, and people just aren't really ready to accept that and understand that. They don't really want to talk about the fact that like you don't see players play well usually until their 3rd or 4th year in the league. and that doesn't matter if they come in at 19 or they come in at 22. It's pretty common that it takes 3 to 4 years to understand how the physicality works, to understand how the speed works, to get your head to start calculating things at game speed properly. It takes time, and people don't really want to recognize that. And part of that's understandable. Like, we all want to have fun, and we all want to get excited, and we're going to set ourselves up for disappointment because we're so excited. And it's one of those things where I always, when I'm listening to somebody's takes, I always try and separate the stuff they say on game day from the stuff they say the day after, etc. Because, the adrenaline of game day is always going to make us a little more antsy and a little more hyped up and disappointed and reactionary to everything. The other thing, though, that's kind of Sekou specific is he didn't play in college. He played overseas, which means that for most people, even those of us who really did draft stuff, we didn't see a lot of Sekou before this, so like Zion Williamson has a bad game. He gets a pass because we saw what he was at Duke. And like, you have this prior knowledge of who this guy could be and what he can do. And his strengths and his weaknesses, and you understand, like, yeah, maybe he's transitioning to the pros, but this is what he was doing against kids his own age, and he just destroyed them. So as soon as he gets ready, like, watch out. We don't have that for Sekou. We kind of are building our own understandings of who he is as a player. And unfortunately, we're going to have to do that with his mistakes more than his successes, because he's a rookie and that's what you get. So I think that's just kind of unfortunate for him, but that's kind of the way it's going to be. And I don't necessarily think that was unexpected. I don't think it's unfair for fans to be a little reactionary about that stuff. It's just really important to keep that perspective in mind.
All right. Well, I agree with you. I really just hope it changes for Sekou, because I don't see, and the thing is, I don't see a way for it to change because of the personnel on the team. So it's unless people just decide to start looking for him more, I don't see how all of a sudden it's going to change, really. So it just sucks. And I wish people would stop holding him to results based. Like, I've heard too many people say he looks like a deer in headlights out there. I don't see that. Do you see that?
I saw it a little bit last year. I mean, last year he did the thing that some rookies do where you get a little deer in the headlights, so you just like floor it and you just go at 100 miles an hour and you hope that your energy takes over. We see that a bit out of Isaiah Stewart this year, where anytime he gets matched up against somebody he doesn't know how to guard, he just starts chopping his feet like crazy because he doesn't know where he's going to go. We saw that out of Sekou last year. I think he's settled in a little bit more this year. I don't see the deer in the headlights nearly as much, but I think that might be some carryover from people who, nobody's seen him a lot this year, so it's still a lot of opinions based on who he was last year.
Fair enough. I think a lot of people are just wrong about Sekou and wrong with how they're evaluating him. But I guess that's a good place to end it right there. I think we had a good hour on here, Hal. I hope you enjoyed your time. Thank you for coming on here with me.
Anytime.
I do have 2 questions for you. I'm going to ask you. No long answers. I just want like quick answers. 2 questions. First one. How happy are you about Stanley Johnson and his play with the Raptors and him getting minutes?
Look, I'll take all my "you were rights" whenever people want to deliver them. You can find me at Halbridious on Twitter. You can just slip one right in there. You can put it on the timeline. You can put it in the DMs. Just "you were right." You don't even have to spell out "you." You can just put a little "you" there. I
will back up Hal with this before we get out of here, just real quick. The things that Stanley is doing for the Raptors have Stanley doing. This is stuff that Hal asked for the Pistons to do. I will not. Me and Hal had multiple conversations. This is stuff that obviously Stanley has developed, and the Raptors are helping him, obviously. But they're also putting him in situations that Hal has said that he wanted the Pistons to put him in, and they just never did. So you have to give Hal credit for that. 2, Hal, this is random. This isn't even about the Pistons. This is just because I'm scrolling down my Twitter page as you were talking, and I see too much of these rumors going around. So I just want to ask your opinion on it. I don't know if you're even a Lions fan or not, but your opinion, do you think that actually so it's a 2-part question, just fast one because we're getting close here. 1, do the Lions trade Stafford? And 2, should they trade Stafford?
I don't know enough about the NFL trade market to know if they should. Like, if you can get first round picks for him, you probably should, even though it breaks my heart. I'm a longtime Stafford fan. Do I think they will? I have no idea. I think at this point it's probably best from a team building standpoint just to get off the money. And I don't think they can put a team around him that's going to make him a winner. And he's the only source of assets you have right now because you're a bad team. So probably it makes me sad because I've been a big Stafford guy since he came here. So
yeah. Definitely. Oh God, that answer just broke my heart. If they trade him, I'm going to cry. Oh God, I can't do it. I might have to do a podcast next talking about that because I'm a huge Stafford guy. I will literally probably cry if they get rid of him, if and when they get rid of him. But anyways, thank you guys for listening. Check me out on YouTube. Coos Ballroom is the same thing. Check me out on YouTube if you like the content over there. Subscribe. Make sure you guys. What is it with this podcast stuff? Do you subscribe? I don't know how this works. Do you subscribe and follow, or how does that work?
I don't know. They use different language. Like I think iTunes is to subscribe. I think Spotify calls it a follow. You can only rate things on iTunes. It only really matters if you rate things on iTunes.
So, all right. So whatever that is, just give me a good rating down there if you like what you heard. Just do that, and just
you're supposed to say 5 stars only because anything else is
5
just gonna
stars.
screw you up.
Five stars only down there. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you, Hal, for coming on, and
Thank you.
You guys have a good day.